Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a seriously fascinating journey across time and space. We often look at historical anomalies or ancient wonders as these impenetrable, monolithic enigmas. Like, how did they do that? But what happens when we slow down and break the impossible down, event by event? Well, today, we're going to unravel some of history's most fascinating mysteries piece by piece. We're going to look at exactly how the past was built, how it was buried, and how, step by step, it's finally coming to light.
Okay, let's dive into this. The source material for today's explainer reminds us of a pretty profound truth. History always finds ways to bury its strangest tales and forgotten lives. The past is hidden beneath oceans, sealed away in dark caves, and literally buried right under our modern cities. But the secret to pulling that truth to the surface? It's sequential investigation. By looking at these mysteries as a chain of events, it's like a giant puzzle. We can finally start to make sense of the seemingly impossible.
Mystery number 1. Creating the unfinished obelisk, a 3,500-year-old engineering marvel.
So we're traveling to the fiery red granite quarries of Aswan in Egypt, more than 3,500 years ago. Picture this. During the 18th dynasty, Queen Hatshepsut commissioned a monument of just impossible scale, destined for the Karnak Temple. Now, to understand the ambition here, you really have to understand the size. If completed, this obelisk would have stood nearly 42 meters tall and weighed a staggering 1,200 tons. To put that into perspective, you're looking at the equivalent weight of 200 African elephants. It would have been the largest stone ever handled by the ancient Egyptians. So, how on earth did they plan to carve something this massive out of solid bedrock using only primitive tools?
Well, they used a highly calculated, step-by-step sequence of events. First, workers tirelessly used heavy dolerite balls to pound and smooth the granite surface. Second, to separate this colossal block from the bedrock, they painstakingly drilled small holes all along the intended cutting line. Third, they inserted completely dry wooden wedges into those tight holes. And finally, in an absolute stroke of ancient engineering genius, they poured water over the wood. As the wood absorbed the water and expanded, the incredible outward pressure cracked the hard stone perfectly along the line.
And they were incredibly close to succeeding. 3 sides of the obelisk were completely finished. But then, a massive, sudden crack appeared in the granite. Whether it was a natural flaw in the stone, an earthquake, or just a quarrying error, the ambitious project was halted forever. But, because it was abandoned right there in the quarry, it left us this permanent, step-by-step architectural guide frozen in the stone, allowing us to basically reverse engineer their exact methods.
Moving right along, mystery number 2, opening the Black Sarcophagus, Alexandria's 2018 construction site surprise.
Moving from ancient construction to a modern-day excavation, we find ourselves in the summer of 2018 on Al-Karmali Street in Alexandria, Egypt. Now, what started as a completely ordinary foundation dig for a new building suddenly turned into one of the most sensational archaeological events of the 21st century. After clearing away nearly 5 meters of soil and rubble, workers unearthed the massive 30-ton black granite sarcophagus. It was larger than almost any sarcophagus ever found in Alexandria. But here's the catch. It was entirely unmarked. No hieroglyphs, no names, no titles. Just an anonymous, smooth, black box sealed away from millennia. The suspense was incredible. Could it be Alexander the Great? Was there some deadly ancient curse inside? What in the world was hidden in there?
Well, as experts brought in modern lifting equipment and carefully pried that heavy lid open, the sequential forensic findings revealed a pretty grim reality. First, there was no gleaming treasure. Instead, the air was hit with a foul stench from a thick, reddish-brown liquid, basically sewage water that had seeped in over thousands of years. Second, submerged in that liquid were 3 skeletons, just stacked on top of one another. Third, analysis showed skull fractures on the bones, suggesting these individuals died violently, maybe in warfare. And finally, there was absolutely zero royal gold, treasures, or identifying inscriptions. Nothing.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the glaring historical contradiction it presents. On one hand, you have the sarcophagus itself, right? Made of incredibly expensive black granite that had to be transported hundreds of miles from Aswan, requiring immense wealth and resources. On the other hand, carbon dating and bone analysis place the occupants as 3 completely ordinary individuals from the 4th century BC Ptolemaic era, buried without any ceremony whatsoever. Why use a priceless monumental tomb for anonymous soldiers?
It's a sequential mystery of history that experts are literally still trying to piece together today.
All right, mystery number 3. Finding the Dead Sea Scrolls, a shepherd's accidental discovery.
Sometimes, uncovering the past isn't the result of a meticulously planned excavation, but rather a crazy sequence of accidental events. Let's travel back to the year 1947, to the arid landscape of the West Bank near Qumran. It all started when a young Bedouin shepherd boy was just searching for a lost goat. He absent-mindedly threw a stone into a dark cave and heard the distinct sound of pottery shattering. That single, accidental action prompted him to look inside, where he found clay jars containing ancient parchment. Shortly after this initial discovery, a massive search effort by both locals and archaeologists rapidly explored 11 caves in the area. The final tally? An astonishing 981 manuscripts and over 25,000 fragments were successfully and safely unearthed from the darkness.
As researchers carefully unrolled and translated these fragments, they started categorizing the incredible contents. About 40% of the text were biblical manuscripts, containing nearly every book of the Hebrew Bible. Another 30% were sectarian writings, like the Community Rule, which experts actually believe belonged to an austere Jewish sect known as the Essenes. The final 30% were Second Temple documents, including apocryphal texts like the Book of Enoch, and, get this, even a mysterious copper scroll that lists 64 locations of hidden gold and silver. I mean, a literal treasure map.
To truly grasp why this rapid chain of extractions was the greatest archaeological find of the 20th century, you just have to look at this number: 1,000. These scrolls were a full 1,000 years older than the Leningrad Codex, which was previously the oldest known complete Hebrew Bible. By accidentally throwing a stone, that shepherd boy bridged a millennium of human history in an instant.
Moving on to mystery number 4, solving Death Valley's stones, the racetrack playa phenomenon.
From ancient texts, let's shift to a natural mystery that baffled scientists for well over a century. Imagine the barren racetrack playa, a completely dry lake bed stretching across California and Nevada in Death Valley. Here, these heavy stones mysteriously glide across the cracked mud, leaving long, winding trails behind them, as if they were just walking completely on their own. Because no one had ever actually seen the stones move, solving this required a super patient, rigorous experiment. In 2011, a research team led by Richard and Jim Norris installed custom GPS trackers on 15 stones, set up a weather station, and placed time-lapse cameras all across the playa. They thought they might have to wait a decade, but their patience paid off early. In December 2013, the cameras finally caught the action. Over 60 stones were recorded sliding across the playa. And over the winter of 2014, they tracked a single rock traveling an unbelievable 224 meters.
And this brilliantly illustrates that the stones weren't moved by magic or aliens or magnetic fields, but by a highly specific step-by-step sequence of natural weather events. First, you need rain to form a shallow pool of water exactly 7 to 10 centimeters deep. Next, a hard night freeze must occur, creating a very delicate 3 to 6 millimeter layer of windowpane ice. Third, the morning sun has to come out just right to begin melting and breaking up these ice sheets. And finally, a light wind pushes the floating ice panels against the rocks, gently shoving the heavy stones forward through the slippery mud. If even one of these events is missing, the stones just don't budge.
Finally, Section 5, the mysteries left behind and what still awaits discovery.
What all of these stories show us is the absolute power of process. Whether we're trying to understand the step-by-step engineering of ancient Egyptian quarry workers, the forensic unmasking of an Alexandrian sarcophagus, the piecing together of fragments in a desert cave, or the careful observation of weather patterns in Death Valley, applying a sequential approach is the ultimate key to demystifying our world. But of course, the timeline of discovery is far from over, right? There are still pyramids unentered in China, massive structures buried beneath the North Sea, and underground labyrinths waiting in the Egyptian sands. It really makes you wonder, what other ancient secrets, what lost civilizations or forgotten engineering marvels are just one event, one accidental discovery, or one scientific experiment away from finally coming to light? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep questioning